Let's bring in Alan Wager. He's a research associate for an initiative called UK in a Changing Europe at King's College London. Wow, Alan, lies, scandals over and over, nearly 40 resignations in the past 24 hours. How can Prime Minister Boris Johnson survive this?
I think the short answer is he probably can't. We're in a situation now where it's probably the final days of Boris Johnson's premiership. I think it's been an accumulation of issues for Boris Johnson throughout 2022, a series of scandals where he's been accused, in essence, of both law-breaking and repeatedly lying to the British people and to the House of Commons. And this is just the latest misdemeanor, but it seems to have caused this mass resignation, this mass revolt from his MPs, his members of parliament, to the point where there won't even be enough politicians left in his party to fill all the positions of government, which is why it's looking increasingly like we've got 24, 48 hours left of Boris Johnson's time as Prime Minister.
Johnson's former health minister, Sajid Javid, addressed the parliament a day after handing in his resignation, a very high-profile resignation, basically saying he no longer has faith in Boris Johnson's leadership. Take a listen to that with me.
I continued to give the benefit of the doubt. And now this week again, we have reason to question the truth and integrity of what we've all been told. And at some point, we have to conclude that enough is enough. I believe that point is now.
Alan, I guess the big question is, does Boris Johnson think enough is enough and that point is now? I mean, he's clearly vowing to stay on and fight, but how much longer can he do that? Should we expect an announcement of sorts today, tomorrow, in the coming hours?
He's got two choices. His first choice is to fight on and wait until there's a confidence vote of his own MPs. His own MPs will then, a majority of them, vote him out, or he decides to resign in the coming days. It looks increasingly likely that he will stay on and try and fight in that contest. But it's clear the vitriol and the sheer and the sort of the wording of a lot of these resignations, the 37 resignations from government today, they speak to his character rather than to any policy difference. This is the first time in British political history where a prime minister is being unseated based on his personal character rather than any particular policy difference over any matter of policy. This is something that's really about Boris Johnson himself personally, which is really, really significant.
How much public support does he have among voters, Alan?
For a long while, this was all priced in, if you like, to Boris Johnson. He was seen as a politician that could get things done. He got Brexit done. So even a lot of voters, even if they might have seen him as potentially someone that bent the truth now and then, they could get on board with that. What we've seen over the past 6 months, as we've seen an avalanche of scandal after scandal for Boris Johnson, is increasingly voters aren't willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. A majority of people that voted Conservative at the last general election, his own party want him gone ASAP. So that's really the change in political context for these MPs as they make this decision is increasingly Boris Johnson was seen as someone that was sort of a funny character, but sort of for many members of the public, for most members of the public, the joke's over.
You mentioned a no confidence vote, but apparently they have to change the internal rules for another no confidence vote to come up, since he survived one last month. Walk us through this process and what we can expect in the coming hours and days.
So in the previous scandal that Boris Johnson was facing a month ago, a vote of confidence was triggered in him, and he won that confidence vote by 210 votes to 140 or so. So he in theory then was insulated from another challenge for a whole year. He couldn't be challenged for another year. But the fact is that now it's very clear that there is no majority support within his party among his MPs. So the MPs are going to go and try and change their own rules, the rules that govern the Conservative Party. They're going to force a majority to change those rules to get him out before this year. So they've got to wait until They meet and a new executive is formed of the Conservative Party's parliamentary party, and then they'll be able to create that majority, then change the rules to then allow a further confidence vote. So this is the final act, if you like, of Boris Johnson. Will be him sort of in the coming few days, eking out the last few days of his premiership before we see that confidence vote, where, you know, we're hearing rumours of maybe 50, maybe 60 of the 360 MPs will support him in that confidence vote. So it's a vote that's impossible for him to win and is likely to be forced, you know, within the coming days.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Alan Wager, thank you very much.